Have you ever felt not good enough for something? Have you ever felt you wanted to audition for that competition, or you wanted to draw something, or you've always wanted this career or this job, but you haven't just felt like good enough for that job? It felt like somehow something is wrong fundamentally with you. You're just like fundamentally unworthy. And if you've had that sense of not feeling good enough, then in this video I'm going to talk about shame, which is the feeling you have when you feel you're not good enough. I'm going to talk about what shame is, what feelings we feel around shame, and then what might be some of the antidotes to shame. How can we reduce the iron grip that shame can have on us? How can we just break free from the claws of shame? So in this video, it's a comprehensive understanding and guide on what shame is and how to go about managing and thriving despite its presence. So let's talk about what shame is. Shame, first of all, is this feeling that I am not worthy. It's this feeling, it's this nagging feeling of unworthiness. So whenever you're feeling unworthy in some way, whenever you're feeling that I'm just not good enough, or even worse, you might feel that I'm bad, or I'm a bad person, or I shouldn't have said that, and I'm just such a terrible person for doing that, that also is shame. So it's not just about achievement, but it could also be about personal qualities. It could be about your relationships. It could be this fundamental sense that I am broken in some way, or I'm defected, or I'm just not meant for this, and I'm just bad, I'm wrong, I'm bad. And that self-hate voice, it's quite a common feature of shame. And if you're watching this and thinking that, oh, I'm doomed, I experience shame, how can I go ahead in life when I have shame? Look, it's not that you individually feel shame. Shame is a very common human emotion. It's experienced by every single human on the planet. If you notice that you are going down in this spiral of shame and negative self-worth, then rather than being an isolating experience, it could actually be an experience of connection. It could be an experience that we share with so many people. It's not you individually who feels shame, but we all feel shame. So the next thing about shame, if we wish to understand it fully as students of emotional intelligence, and if we want to overcome it, or at least let it not have a gripping impact on us, then the first thing we need to understand is this: shame happens in an environment. So what do I mean by that? In childhood, when we are born, we are essentially shameless. Have you seen children? They do like all sorts of things, and they're like, and they're fine being nude. So essentially, we were born shameless. There's no shame that's inbuilt in the human psyche. But what happens as a result of, civilization, you might call it, or education, or culturalization, whatever you want to call it, but upbringing. As a result of that, as children, we pick up messages that, doing this and being this is good, and doing that or not doing that is bad. Let me give you an example. So one thing that is rampant in culture, and I'm not even saying it's a bad thing per se, but something that's extremely common is, let's say when you are children, you will often see parents tell to their children, hey, you're such a good girl, when let's say she got good grades in school. So for that little girl, in her little mind, she's not thinking that my parents are trying to compliment me, but she's forming this image of herself that, look, I'm a good girl when I perform well in my academics, or when I score well. And then what might happen is, one fine day she may not score well, and then the parents might not even discourage her or something. They might just be like, fine. They might even love her, but because she received that initial message that performing in school means I am good, when she does not perform and the parents are even neutral, it is possible that the girl develops this worldview that, okay, now that I'm not performing, then I must be bad. That must be a source of shame that I got bad grades. It must be a source of shame that I'm not living up to my parents' standards. Now, of course, this is not going on consciously. I'm not saying a little girl is thinking all that, But it is all going on under the hood, when that girl might notice that my parents aren't reacting as enthusiastically. And I'm describing a scenario where the parents are neutral. Quite often what we see, quite overt criticism, quite overt shaming when that happens. And there could be, the parents might fail to distinguish for the little child's mind that, look, it's not about your whole personality, it's not about your whole being, it's just about this little test, it's about the action as opposed to you. And of course, I'm not trying to say that teachers or parents, they were bad or they were ill-intentioned. It could be a communication thing, and children need that excessive amounts of communications, and even then their brains might not be super developed to understand the difference for the criticism for their work as opposed to the criticism for themselves. And so it's quite common in this type of a way for shame to form. Now, of course, academics is just one example, and parents and teachers might just be one example. There are many other ways in which shame can happen. For example, Instagram can instill the shame that my body is not worth it. My body is not good enough. My body is not sexy enough, or I'm not chiseled enough, or I'm not ripped enough, or I don't have those eyes, or I don't have that lifestyle. And that can induce a lot of shaming, even though the influencer did not explicitly say that, even though no one literally elicited that comparison, but we might still get that sense of my body is not good enough, and by extension I am not good enough. And of course, then you may even try to get in shape. You might try some fitness regime, and hey, guess what, you may fail to lose that weight, you may fail to drop that fat, and then you might think that, look, now I'm certainly not good enough, right? I tried so hard. But underneath this, you might absolutely not see that the influencer probably has like 5 fitness trainers that are working with her, and there she has like 3 chefs that are making meals for her. And so we might completely ignore that and just take that blame onto us. So whenever we feel like we are not achieving something that we think we should be, or we are not a certain way, or we don't look a certain way, it's fertile grounds for shame to form. It's fertile grounds for the sense of unworthiness and the sense of like defeatedness to form. Before we go ahead, I invite you to think about what are some areas of your life in which you might be feeling shame. What are some areas in which you think that, look, you know what, I feel like I'm fundamentally unworthy. And those might not be the words you use. Like some people might say I'm not unattractive, some people might say I'm not good enough, some people might say I'm not worthy. What are your words? And just take a moment to reflect on that. So since point number 2 was that shame occurs in an environment, shame is created in an environment, so that gives us hints about how to get rid of shame. How do we overcome shame so that it no longer controls us? And this is the key to that, I think. So since shame happens in an environment, shame is overcome. Shame cannot survive sharing. So that means once you are outside that environment, it could be the same people, by the way, it just means a different time, a different context, be it with respect to time, place, etc. So let's take this example of, let's say now you have made this family and community and you have friends with whom you can freely share. Shame cannot survive that. In fact, one reason we crave the company of people like us, one reason we crave the company who understand us, is because we can be shame-free in that context. We know that if we say something, we know if we show those parts of us, then we are not going to get judged, or we are not going to get put down on. And so shame cannot survive sharing in an optimal environment. Now, I'm not saying go back to the exact same environment and just power your way through sharing. No, there's no guarantee that people will actually accept you and not reject you. Of course not. So this is the wise decision that you need to make as people who are self-aware to watch this video. Like, how can I create an environment? How can I create a community? How can I create a friendship group or a family group or anything in which every one of us feels safe, share, to express parts of us without feeling the need that, look, I'm going to be shamed or I'm going to be judged. Perhaps a call to do an audit on the relationships you have right now and see if the relationships you have are supporting you, accepting you fully, or are they more shaming, more down-putting. It's an extremely important audit to do if we want to survive shame, because ultimately shame is healed when we express those parts of us which were previously shamed but now are fully accepted. This is also one of the key roles of relationships, romantic or otherwise, that you form consciously. So when you're choosing friends, you're choosing partners, even business partners for that matter, see if that relationship is shaming, or can you see that relationship is supportive and growth oriented. And we can't always create optimal environments, and for that we need to understand this fundamental point, which is this: worth comes from birth. Worth comes from birth. Look, who is to say that the person on Instagram is somehow better than you? Yeah, sure, she might be more in shape, but does that mean she's better or he is better? Who is to say that someone who's jacked and ripped is better than someone who's skinny? Who is to say that? It's only when we draw that hierarchy in our minds that we feel that we are inferior, that we feel that we are not worthy, that we feel that something is wrong with us. But who is to say that that person who's a celebrity, who just has like lots of eyeballs on them, is somehow fundamentally better than you? Who is to say that? And the answer is no one. No real reason to think that some humans are inherently superior, and therefore there's no real reason to think that you or I or anyone is inherently inferior. I like to say worth comes from birth. By virtue of us being humans makes us deserving of love and attention and praise and acceptance, and these are not gained in any way. Let's say when a newborn baby is born, does it need to do anything to garner the love of their parents? Does it need to do anything? Do they need to perform? Do they need to get good grades? Do they need to do some backflips? Probably not, right? Well, certainly not, right? So why do we need to? And we often confuse achievement and status and victory and adoration and praise for basic worth. Sure, you can play all those games of money or looks or fitness. I'm not saying those games are bad. This is not a case for abolishing all our hierarchies, because they do serve us in one way or the other, and hopefully in a good way. Hopefully they inspire us. Hopefully we see someone healthy and be like, oh look, I want to work on my fitness. But we need to absolutely separate that from our core worth. That person is more fit than us. They are not more worthy than us. That person doesn't deserve more love just because they are jacked or something. And when we put it like that, it sounds so ridiculous. It sounds so obvious. And yet when we are in the grips of shame, we are not able to see that. You're not able to notice that. And my invitation to you is, can you deeply believe in that fact that you are as worthy as anyone else, and worth fundamentally comes from birth. No matter the skin color you have, no matter what gender you are at, no matter what height you have, how you look, that worth is fundamentally coming from birth, and no one has to achieve anything or do anything in order to achieve basic human worth. The final message I want to leave you with is this: you are enough. That's it. That's the antidote to shame. If shame is a sense of, look, I'm not worthy enough, then the antidote to that is fully and deeply and in the bottommost part of your heart believing that I am enough. I don't need to achieve anything. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop playing these games, because they're fun. They give you resources. You can have fun with money and all of that. Great. Awesome. But just because someday you lose that game, just because someday you don't win that game, just because someday you don't look as best, just because someday your hair is not done, that does not mean that I'm not worthy. That does not mean that you are not good enough. And that dissociation of worth from any achievement needs to happen if you want to overcome shame. So, you are enough, you are awesome, and you're beautiful. See you in the next video.